Buluvinagar, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here. As you know, we made an announcement this morning that the budget will be delivered on the 17th of July. And then we have mandatory 1 week's break, and then of course Parliament goes into debate, and that should be approved by the end of the month for it to come into effect from the 1st of August. We're here this afternoon is obviously to hear from you directly in respect of some of the ideas, suggestions you have, some questions you may have. Many of you have already given your submissions in respect of the budget itself. A lot of the submissions have been very valuable in respect of formulating a budget, in particular regarding fiscal policy going forward. We obviously want to take advantage of the situation. Some may think that that's actually an oxymoron by saying that, but the reality of the matter is that, you know, in these kind of times, we need to be able to be thinking outside the box, to be able to take advantage of some of the natural advantages that have been created because of the pandemic, but also at the same time address some of the real issues that have emanated as a result of the pandemic itself. By way of setting the scene, so to speak, as you know that we've been in very unprecedented times, literally. The global economy is very much in downturn. Many developed countries, in fact all developed countries, are facing huge challenges themselves. Debt is escalating, not only to simply meet the cost of unemployment benefits, for example, in many countries, whether it's Australia, whether it's UK, and there are other countries that have put in place various measures because of huge job losses. Just to put into perspective, you know, in Australia you had 600,000 jobs lost in 1 month, just a few weeks ago, actually a couple of months ago. Lots of rescue packages have been put in. There's a lot of talk now about, you know, whether debt by countries is actually a good thing, as long as the debt does not actually lead to huge inflation in the market, and as long as the debt is actually used for productive purposes. Our budget, of course, is going to take into account the fact that government has lost a lot of revenue as a result of our borders being shut down. We, of course, reacted to it very swiftly when we had the first case that was announced, because we knew it would have an immediate respect of our revenue collection, whether it's VAT, STT, and ECAL. And of course, with job losses, it has an impact on your PAYE, ability of people to spend the disposable income available for people. So we then put in place the COVID-19 budget response. We now have to know that our financial year begins from the 1st of August to the 31st of July. We have to put in place a new budget for the next financial year. But as we've said, that given the fact that there's such a huge state of flux, there's a lot of fluidity, there's a lot of flexibility that needs to be built into the system, that if things change, hopefully for the better in the next 6 months, then we'll need to change the permutation, change the combination. So for example, if Australia and New Zealand becomes COVID contained, or what some people call COVID free, and as we announced on the weekend, that anybody that comes from a COVID free country or COVID contained country into Fiji can roam around, move around like a normal tourist did prior to the pandemic. So assuming that happens, that gives a lot more flexibility, and obviously a lot more flexibility in terms of flights coming in. That'll have enormous impact in terms of the revenue projections, and of course revenue projections for you too also. So we need to maintain that level of flexibility in our minds as to how we can adjust ourselves in response to what's going to happen. The science, and we hopefully will be joined by the Acting PS for Health, Dr. James Fong, very soon, and he can give you the rationale behind some of the decisions that have been made in respect of the phase 2, what we call the phase 2 of relaxing some of the measures. But the science is evolving quite rapidly. At the beginning of this pandemic, we were told, for example, that children are most vulnerable, or are very vulnerable, and can be carriers of COVID-19. Now we are being told, scientists, in fact, they are the least vulnerable, and they don't actually carry the illness, because it is a new coronavirus, in the general stream of the coronavirus, and they are learning more things about it. So this is one of the reasons why the schools are now open up, because we feel a lot more confident that they are not the large receptors of this particular virus strain, and therefore we can do that. Dr. James Fong is obviously going to have a long life. He's just joined us. I just mentioned his name. Doc, please. And these are some of the changes that are obviously taking place, responding to it, and therefore we need to maintain that particular level of flexibility. In respect of going forward, as you know, that we made a number of announcements through the Honourable Prime Minister on Sunday regarding certain travel arrangements based on the science that we have and based on the changes that have taken place and the fact that Fiji is COVID contained. We, of course, would have been a lot nicer if New Zealand was also COVID contained and they had declared themselves COVID free, but within a matter of days they now have 8 cases of people with COVID-19. We so far have not gone back to having new cases. And of course you have to also understand, if somebody comes from overseas now and is in quarantine, immediately getting off the plane and tests positive for COVID-19, your ability or your way that you would view that would be very different if a person who had COVID-19 and was roaming around Fiji, or there was community-based transmission. If somebody gets off the plane and is in quarantine, there's obviously a different situation to somebody who may be within the community, so that needs to be treated differently. Now, based on these, the situation that we have, we made a number of announcements, and I'll get Dr. Fong to actually talk about the rationale behind it, but just very quickly, we've said that we're going to have the Bula bubble, and the Bula bubble obviously specifically only in relation to Australia and New Zealand. Now, there's obviously a particular level of trust that our health authorities have in the health system in Australia and New Zealand to say that with certain conditions we will allow Australian and New Zealand tourists to come to Fiji. Those conditions, of course, being that they have a certificate that says that they have been in quarantine or quarantine-like conditions and have had a swab test that's negative, and they can then travel to Fiji within 48 hours. Some countries have 72 hours. Dr. James Fong can explain why we've chosen 48 hours, and of course with things improving, that period or that window can actually change. So within 48 hours they come to Fiji. They have what some people have called corridors, we're calling the VIP lanes, and they go to specific resorts where they stay there for the period of their stay in Fiji, and then they leave through that corridor back to Australia and New Zealand. That's at least getting the numbers through the doors at the airport, doors through your resorts, and of course those who provide ancillary services will be beneficiaries of that. Then we have another category that we mentioned before, those people who come from COVID-contained countries. People who come from COVID-contained countries do the swab test before they leave from a recognized health institution, which our health authorities accept, and then they can come to Fiji and they roam around like everybody else, like a normal tourist did prior to the pandemic, because they're coming from a COVID-contained country. In other words, they don't have any active cases. So that's the second category. The third category is what we call the Pacific Pathway. So at this point in time, we have Tuvalu, Kiribati, and Tonga that we've said it up to in respect of travel, because there's quite a few of them who come to Fiji to buy supplies, whether it's clothes, trading items, whatever the case may be. But they have to go into quarantine for 14 days at their own expense. And because, notwithstanding the fact that some of them have said that they don't have any active cases, the reality of the matter is that Fiji is the only independent state in the Pacific region that actually has a WHO certified testing lab for COVID-19. There are 2 other places in the Pacific that does have that, which is Tahiti and New Caledonia, but they're obviously French territories. So, given the fact that Tuvalu, Kiribati, and Tonga don't have those testing facilities, and therefore there is a probability or off chance that maybe not necessarily tracked all the COVID-19 people at this point in time, So we have said that they can come to Fiji, they need to go into quarantine facilities, and then of course they can, roam around like. In all of this, we've also put a proviso in the sense that now people can actually choose their site of quarantine, which leads me on to the next one, which is, for example, the survivor people want to come to Fiji to start shooting. And as you know, New Zealand recently did that for the Avatar series. So if a crew from USA, and most of them are based in USA, wants to come to Fiji to commence the Survivor series, they have to go into quarantine because of the high rate of infection in USA. So they do the test before they leave, they come to Fiji, they have to go into quarantine. But for example, if they want to pay and stay at Hilton, for example, I'm not favoring any hotels here particularly, but just, for example, that just came to mind, or Sofitel, and they have the ability to pay for that, which a lot of them would, and the Ministry of Health authorities agree to the protocols. They pay for the RFMF that will actually monitor the quarantine. Then they can stay there. So giving them the flexibility. Then they can stay there. And then, of course, they've served their 14 days, then they can go off. Or, for example, a crew may want to come and go to an island on which they can serve the quarantine period. So that's one. The other one, of course, is what we call the blue lanes, which is yachts. As you know, the America's Cup is going to be held next year in New Zealand. There's quite a lot of interest in coming and parking in Fiji, or do whatever yachties do, super yachts and what have you. So we've said that the 14 days that they take time to travel can serve as the quarantine period in isolation, as long as they don't have anybody boarding the ship mid-sea or getting off, or them stopping at any other port, as long as all the people who are on board serve their 14 days there, and they come here, they need to, again, the health authorities will do the various tests, etc., and then they can, move around and roam around. We've also then said specifically for high net worth individuals or companies that may want to come to Fiji. And in fact, we announced that on Sunday we already have one group coming already. We just did the approval yesterday for the flight to come in. There's about 30 of them, and they'll be spending 3 months here in Fiji. And very well-known company they're coming from. So we've also said, because there was a lot of interest, they're coming in and they're paying for their way. They actually land, they come in their private jet, and then they get on a seaplane, and then they go to the island and they stay there for 3 months. So from our perspective, this is a balancing between managing our health risks and also opening up the economic pathways. It's critically important to do that. A few people I know have made some comments, whether on Facebook or whatever it is, saying, if we are COVID contained, why aren't we opening up like New Zealand has done, and why still social distancing? Obviously, we're taking a cautious measure, because we don't want to go into a situation like New Zealand where you declare yourself COVID contained and then you have to roll it back again. That'll make us look bad. So we'd rather take those measures in place, put those measures in place now, than to actually, open it up quite quickly without people actually understanding the need to adapt to the new norm. There's a need to adapt to the new norm. Businesses are the way that we interact with each other physically, but also economically in respect of our financial models, our pricing structures, all of that. And I'm talking specifically about not just about the hotel industry, but other ancillary services too. Because believe you me, when other regions in the rest of the world starts opening up, they are going to cut their prices rock bottom. We've already spoken to some people through third parties, for example, in Bali. And most of them are just looking to fill up their rooms at no margin at all, just breaking even perhaps. Some are willing to take huge losses, at least a couple of months, as long as they get the people back into their destinations. That, I think, is critically important for everybody to understand. And we as government also want to be able to collaborate, whether it's Fiji Airways, and I know Fiji Airways is currently working with a number of properties regarding various packages. And we want to be able to participate in those kind of packages where we provide some direct benefit. It's not only about simply just cutting the taxes, it's about ensuring that those, not just the taxes, but in respect of the actual pricing of the various services we offer actually are quite attractive. The reality of the matter, like I said, 600,000 job losses 1 month. We only have 4% of the total Australian outbound market. We have only 4%. New Zealand, I think, it's only 6%. That's the reality. So there's another 96% of Australians who are traveling overseas who are going to other destinations. Whether it's Bali, whether it's Phuket, whether it's Vanuatu, whether it's Europe, whether it's USA. We have to understand that. Similarly with New Zealand. They're going to Cook Islands, they're going to various other places. So by us making these announcements, we've actually said to Australia and New Zealand, we are doing this, what can you do now? Because just a few weeks ago when Spain said that they are going to now allow British citizens to come to Spain for a holiday, the British authorities at that point in time, I just got told yesterday they may change their stance, but the immediate response was, yes, you can go to Spain, but when you come back, you're going to compulsory quarantine. So that will, of course, discourage the British traveling tourists to actually go to Spain. Now, there's one particular island in the in Spain, I should say, where they've now allowed German tourists to come in. And in fact, they've started flying there, but they're restricted only to that island. So that's what they're doing. So you have to understand what are the various permutations and combinations that are taking place regarding that. So before I go, I'm obviously joined here today by Dr. James Fong, as I highlighted earlier, and talk about some of the health considerations. The Permanent Secretary for Economy, Margareta Conrote, Shaheen Ali, the Permanent Secretary for Tourism, Shiri Gounder, who is also the Head of Fiscal Planning and Strategic Thinking within the Ministry of Economy, and Tupo Baravilala, who's Director General for Digital Fiji Program, who's here to talk about the Care Fiji app. Before actually I get them to speak and Dr. James Fong to speak, it's critically important that everybody gets onto the Care Fiji app. This is one way that you're able to market yourself internationally, to say to the tourists in particular that Fiji has a digital way of actually contact tracing. And she'll explain to you obviously how the system works. We explained that quite in detail on Sunday. But just for a minute, all of us are here in this room. God forbid if one of us has COVID-19 in a week's time, and then the health authorities will ask you, who were you in contact with over the past 28 days? Most of you won't be able to remember. And who were you in contact with for 15 minutes or more? All of you would be here for more than 15 minutes. And were you a distance of 2 meters? But the fact that you have a contact tracing app that simply records the phone numbers that is within 2 meters of you over the previous 28 days gives confidence to a lot of people. Say, hey, I can go to this country. If I walk into this hotel, and if assuming one of the local staff or another tourist actually has COVID-19, they're quickly able to get in touch with me and tell me that, you may have been exposed, go and get a health check done. That's confidence. And this is why, of course, as you know, Singapore has been very, very much on the cutting edge of using technology, which is where we brought the source code from. We spoke to them and they gave us the source code. They made it available internationally. And that's it's also the genesis for the contact tracing app that the Australians have, that also they have developed. But Tupo will explain to you the details and the privacy issues, etc. So with all those introductory remarks, I'd like to invite Dr. James Fong to speak. The whole idea of this is for you to be able to tell us what are some of the issues you've been facing, some issues you want to address, some of your ideas. I know most of you have already given us written submissions. But it'd be good to sometimes, I think, talk about these things and any new ideas you may have that we can, vent and, of course, take on board. So with those remarks, I'd like to now call Dr. James Fong. Thanks.